The red dust of Kepler 442c swirled around the boots of 23 military cadets as they stood in formation. The alien sun beat down mercilessly on the rocky training ground. Marcus Chen wiped sweat from his forehead and kept his eyes forward. Around him, creatures from across the galaxy waited for their final test. Drill instructor Zexthara stepped forward. Her forearms moved with practiced precision as she adjusted her equipment belt. The Corellian's chitinous armor gleamed like black metal in the harsh light. Her mandibles clicked together as she surveyed the mixed group of cadets. "Listen up, maggots," Zexthara's voice cracked like a whip. "This is your final survival examination. 72 hours on the surface of this world. No backup, no easy way out. You fail here. You wash out of the course." Marcus glanced at his fellow cadets. Veltar stood to his left, her blue-scaled skin already glistening with protective slime. The Sothran's gills fluttered nervously on the sides of her neck. To his right, Gornix shifted his massive weight from foot to foot. The Thurin's natural armor plates made soft grinding sounds as he moved. "The rules are simple," Zexthara continued. "Survive for 3 days. Report to checkpoint stations every 12 hours. You will rest for 8 hours at each checkpoint. This is mandatory. Your bodies need recovery time." A few cadets nodded. Marcus remained still, but his brow furrowed slightly. "The course covers 50 square kilometers of hostile terrain," the instructor went on. "You'll face temperature extremes, dangerous wildlife, and equipment failures. Some of you won't make it. That's the point." Zexthara's 4 eyes swept across the group. They lingered on Marcus for a moment. The human was smaller than most other cadets. His brown skin showed no natural armor or special adaptations. To Corellian eyes, he looked weak. "Each species will follow the same schedule," Zexthara announced. 12 hours of movement, 8 hours of rest. This pattern matches optimal performance cycles for military operations. No exceptions. Marcus raised his hand. The instructor's mandibles clicked with annoyance. "What is it, human?" "Ma'am, I don't think I need the 8-hour rest periods," Marcus said quietly. "I can keep moving." A ripple of laughter went through the group. Gornix's armor plates rattled as he chuckled. Veltar made a sound like water bubbling. Even some of the other species joined in. Zexthara's 4 arms crossed over her chest. "You think you're special, human?" "No, ma'am. I just don't tire the same way. Your species barely survived your own soft world," Zexthara said. Her voice carried across the training ground. "You have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced senses. And you think you can outperform species that evolved on truly hostile worlds?" Marcus kept his expression neutral. "I'm just saying I don't need the rest breaks, ma'am." "Listen carefully, human." Zexthara stepped closer. Her chitinous face was inches from Marcus's. "Humans are weak. Your planet is a garden world compared to places like this. You'll collapse within 6 hours without proper rest cycles. I've seen it before." More laughter from the other cadets. Marcus said nothing, but his jaw tightened slightly. In fact, Zexthara straightened up, addressing the whole group. "Let's use human Chun as our first lesson. Overconfidence kills. Know your limitations, or the environment will teach them to you the hard way." Gornix spoke up, his voice like grinding stone. "How did his species even make it to space travel? They look like they break in a strong wind." "Good question." Zexthara clicked her mandibles again. "Humans got lucky. They developed technology before their world could weed them out properly. Now they think they belong with real warriors." Marcus stared straight ahead. His hands were clenched behind his back, but his face remained calm. "The human will follow the same rest schedule as everyone else," Zexthara declared. "When he collapses from exhaustion, medics will extract him. Consider it a learning experience for the rest of you." The instructor moved to the equipment table. You each get basic survival gear, water purification tablets, emergency rations for 3 days, a shelter tarp, medical kit, 1 knife. That's it. As the cadets filed forward to collect their equipment, Marcus noticed the weather station displays. The readout showed normal conditions for the next few days. Clear skies, mild temperature variations. It would be challenging but manageable. One more thing, Zexthar called out as they finished gathering gear. The course starts now. First checkpoint is grid reference 7 Alpha. 12 hours from now. Don't be late. The cadets scattered in different directions. Marcus checked his compass and map one final time. Grid reference 7 Alpha was 25 kilometers across rough terrain. For most species, that meant a hard push followed by necessary rest. Marcus started walking at a steady pace. Not fast, not slow, just consistent. He had learned this rhythm during his childhood in the Australian outback. His grandfather had taught him to read the land, to move with purpose, but without waste. Around him, other cadets sprinted ahead. Gornix charged forward like a living tank. His heavy armor allowed him to smash through obstacles, but Marcus could already see the steam rising from his cooling vents. Veltar moved in short bursts, using her powerful legs to leap between rocks before resting. Marcus just kept walking. His breathing stayed even. His heart rate remained steady. This was what his body was built for. Not short sprints followed by long rests, but continuous movement across vast distances. As the alien sun began to set, Marcus could see other cadets setting up camp in the distance. They had covered good ground in short bursts, but now needed to rest. Marcus pulled out his water bottle, took a small sip, and kept walking. The temperature dropped as night fell. Marcus adjusted his pace slightly but never stopped moving. He could see the lights of other camps scattered across the landscape. Most cadets were already asleep, recovering for tomorrow's push. Marcus walked through the night. When the alien sun rose again, he could see the checkpoint ahead. Other cadets were just starting to break camp, stretching muscles stiff from rest. Marcus arrived at grid reference 7 Alpha exactly 12 hours after starting. He wasn't breathing hard. He wasn't exhausted. He looked like he could keep going for hours more. The checkpoint monitor, another Krillian, stared at the human in confusion. According to the tracker, Marcus had maintained steady movement for the entire 12-hour period. No rest stops. No sleep breaks. Human, you were supposed to rest, the monitor said. I didn't need to, Marcus replied simply. Behind him, other cadets began arriving. They looked tired from their morning sprint to catch up. Marcus looked like he was just getting started. In the distance, weather monitoring stations detected something unusual. A small atmospheric disturbance was forming. The computers classified it as a minor storm front. Nothing serious. It would pass during the next rest period. The storm was about to change everything. The wind started as a gentle breeze. Marcus felt it brush against his face as he prepared to leave the checkpoint. Around him, other cadets were still arriving, breathing hard from their morning push. The checkpoint monitor handed out fresh water rations and checked equipment. Next stop is grid reference 4 Delta, the monitor announced. Another 12 hours. Rest period begins when you arrive. Marcus checked his map. The next checkpoint was 30 kilometers through mountainous terrain. He started walking at the same steady pace that had carried him through the night. Behind him, other cadets were organizing their gear for another sprint and rest cycle. The wind grew stronger. Within 2 hours, the gentle breeze had become a steady gust. Dust devils danced across the rocky ground. Marcus pulled his collar up and adjusted his pack. The weather was changing faster than the forecasts had predicted. Gornix thundered past him. armor plates clanging with each heavy step. The Thuran was built like a living tank, designed for short bursts of incredible power. His cooling systems worked overtime in the rising wind, steam hissing from vents along his back. "Still walking slow, human?" Gornix called out as he passed. Real warriors move with purpose. Marcus didn't respond. He watched the sky as dark clouds gathered overhead. His grandfather had taught him to read weather patterns in the outback. This looked bad. Veltar bounded past in a series of powerful leaps. Her blue scales shimmered as she moved from rock to rock. The southern species had evolved for quick escapes through water and over land. She could cover ground fast when she needed to, but Marcus noticed she was already breathing harder than usual. The wind continued to build. What had started as gusts became steady pressure. The temperature began dropping rapidly. Marcus reached for his radio. "Checkpoint monitor, this is Cadet Chen. Weather conditions are deteriorating faster than predicted." Static crackled over the radio. "Chen, continue to objective. Minor storm front expected. Will pass during rest period." Marcus looked at the clouds again. They were darker now, swirling with unnatural patterns. The twin moons of Kepler 442c were approaching alignment. He remembered reading about the gravitational effects that caused atmospheric disturbances. This was not going to be a minor storm. The first drops of rain felt like ice. Marcus pulled out his tarp and wrapped it around his shoulders without stopping. He had learned to move and adapt at the same time. Around him, he could see other cadets, seeking shelter as the rain intensified. The wind hit like a physical blow. Marcus staggered but kept his feet. The rain turned horizontal, driven by winds that screamed across the landscape. In the distance, he could see Gornix hunched behind a rock formation. The massive Thuran's armor was designed to deflect weapons, but the storm was finding every gap and joint. Veltar had disappeared completely. Marcus hoped she had found shelter somewhere safe. The temperature plummeted. What had been uncomfortable rain became a mixture of ice and sleet. Marcus kept walking, but now he had to lean into the wind with each step. His steady pace slowed but never stopped. The radio crackled with emergency signals. Voices called out coordinates and status reports. The storm was affecting everyone, but some species were handling it worse than others. Marcus found a shallow overhang and stopped for the first time since leaving the checkpoint. Not to rest, but to check his equipment. The tarp was holding up well. His water was secure. His food was protected. Most importantly, he was still generating body heat through constant movement. All cadets, all cadets. The radio buzzed with static. Severe weather warning. Seek immediate shelter. Storm duration unknown. Maintain position until conditions improve. Marcus looked out at the chaos. The wind was now strong enough to pick up rocks and throw them like bullets. The rain had turned to hail that struck like hammers. Lightning split the sky with electric blue light. He had two choices: stop and wait like everyone else, or keep moving. Marcus adjusted his pack and stepped back into the storm. The key was not to fight the wind, but to work with it. When it pushed him left, he angled left and kept moving forward. When it tried to knock him down, he bent low and pressed on. His body generated heat through motion. As long as he kept moving, he would stay warm. Other cadets were not so lucky. Through the storm, Marcus could see scattered thermal signatures on his emergency tracker. Most had gone stationary, hunkered down in whatever shelter they could find. Their body temperatures were dropping as they burned through stored energy without movement to keep warm. Marcus came across Veltar first. The Southern was curled up in a cave, shivering violently. Her gills were bleeding from the pressure changes in the storm. Her scales had lost their shimmer and turned dull blue. "Veltar," Marcus called over the wind. "Are you injured?" She looked up with large, frightened eyes. The air pressure. My gills can't handle the changes. I need to get to water, but... She gestured weakly at the storm outside. In her home environment, Veltar could swim faster than most species could run. But here, in this chaos, her specialized adaptations were working against her. Marcus checked his medical kit. He had pressure bandages that might help, but Veltar needed more than first aid. She needed evacuation. I'll mark your position for rescue, Marcus told her. Stay here and try to keep warm. He activated an emergency beacon and left it with her. Then he stepped back into the storm. The wind was getting worse. Marcus had to lean almost horizontal just to keep moving forward. Each step was a fight against the forces, trying to knock him down. But he kept going. This was what his body was designed for. Not speed or strength, but the ability to keep going when everything else stopped. He found Gornix an hour later. The massive Thuran was trapped under a fallen tree, his armor cracked in several places. Steam poured from his cooling systems as they struggled with temperature extremes. In the cold, his armor was becoming a heat sink, draining warmth from his body. Human, Gornix gasped when he saw Marcus. How are you still moving? Marcus knelt beside the trapped warrior. The tree was too heavy to lift alone, but he could dig around the armor to create space. I'm going to get you out. The storm, Gornix said weakly. Too strong. Wait for rescue. Marcus looked at the warrior's heat readings. Gornix was losing body temperature fast. If he stayed trapped much longer, his biological systems would shut down. No, Marcus said, pulling out his knife. We don't wait. We keep moving. He began cutting away branches and digging through debris. The storm raged around them, but Marcus worked steadily. No wasted motion. No panic. Just focused effort toward a goal. It took 30 minutes to free Gornix. By then, the Thuran was barely conscious. Marcus helped him to a more sheltered position and activated another emergency beacon. Stay here, Marcus told him. Help is coming. Gornix grabbed Marcus's arm with one massive hand. Why? Why aren't you exhausted? Marcus looked out at the storm that was tearing apart the training course. This is what humans do. We keep going. He stepped back into the chaos. According to his tracker, there were still 15 other cadets scattered across the course. Some were probably safe and good shelter. Others might need help. Marcus checked his compass and continued toward the next checkpoint. The storm showed no signs of stopping. If anything, it was getting worse. The twin moons were reaching full alignment, and the gravitational forces were pulling more energy from the atmosphere. This was going to be a very long night, but Marcus had learned something important during his trek across the Australian outback with his grandfather. When the environment tried to kill you, the best response was not to hide from it. The best response was to outlast it. He pulled his tarp tighter and kept walking into the storm. The storm entered its second day with no sign of weakening. In the command bunker, drill instructor Zexthara stared at the monitoring screens with growing concern. What should have been a simple weather front had become a planetary disaster. Status report, she demanded from the weather technician. The twin moon alignment is creating atmospheric chaos, the technician replied. Wind speeds over 200 kilometers per hour. Temperature swings from -40 to +60 degrees. Electromagnetic interference is blocking most communications. Zexthara's 4 eyes focused on the thermal tracking display. 23 dots had started the exercise. Now most of them were stationary, clustered in whatever shelter they could find. Their heat signatures were weak and getting weaker, all except one. Technician, check the tracking system. One of the signals appears to be malfunctioning. The technician looked at the display. One thermal signature was still moving in a steady pattern across the landscape. It had maintained constant motion for over 30 hours. System checks normal, instructor. That signal is Cadet Chun, the human. Impossible, Zexthara clicked her mandibles. Run diagnostics on his tracker. The results came back clean. Marcus Chen was not only still moving, he was maintaining body temperature through motion while other cadets were going into hypothermia despite sheltered positions. Marcus himself was currently traversing a rocky valley, following what had once been a stream bed. The water was now a torrent of mud and debris, but the valley provided some protection from the worst winds. He had been walking for 36 hours without stopping. His legs ached. His feet were sore inside his boots. His shoulders hurt from carrying his pack through the wind. But these were minor discomforts compared to the larger goal. Keep moving. Generate heat. Stay alive. He checked his emergency tracker again. 2 more signals were close by, both stationary for several hours. One showed critically low body temperature. Marcus found the first cadet sheltered in a crack between 2 large rocks. It was Vexpol, an insectoid klaxon, whose compound eyes had frozen shut in the cold. His chitin was covered in ice, and his body temperature was dropping fast. Vexpol, Marcus called out. Can you hear me? The klaxon's antennae twitched weakly. Cold, he whispered through clicking mandibles. So cold. Marcus knew that klaxon species came from hot, dry worlds. Their bodies were designed for heat retention in desert environments. This storm was the opposite of everything their evolution had prepared them for. Marcus pulled out his emergency beacon and activated it. Then he did something that went against every survival rule he had learned. He took off his outer jacket and wrapped it around Vexpol. No, Vexpol protested weakly. You need. I generate heat by moving, Marcus explained. You need this more than I do. He helped position Vexpol in the most sheltered part of the rock crack, then continued his trek wearing only his inner shirt. The cold hit him like a physical blow, but Marcus started jogging to generate body heat. Within minutes, his circulation had adapted. The second signal belonged to Kretha, a crystalline silicoid whose body was designed to absorb and store solar energy. In the storm-darkened sky, she was slowly powering down like a battery running empty. Marcus found her in a shallow cave, her crystal structure dim and flickering. Silicoids could survive almost anything if they had energy, but without sunlight, they became as fragile as glass. Kretha, Marcus knelt beside her. I'm going to move you to higher ground. There might be more light above the cloud layer. The silicoid's voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Too weak. Cannot climb. Marcus looked at her crystal form. She was beautiful but heavy, probably weighing twice what he did. Moving her would be extremely difficult. But leaving her here meant watching her slowly fade away. Marcus had an idea. He pulled out his tarp and fashioned a crude sled. It took time and effort, but he managed to get Kretha onto the improvised stretcher. Then he began the slow process of hauling her up the valley wall toward higher ground. In the command bunker, Zexthara watched the thermal display with growing amazement. The human signal was moving slowly but steadily upward, carrying additional mass. Technician, what is Chen doing? Based on movement patterns, he appears to be rescuing other cadets, instructor. That's not part of the mission, Zexthara said, but her voice lacked its usual authority. She activated her computer terminal and pulled up the human database for the first time. What she read changed everything. Humans had not evolved on a garden world. Earth was classified as a death world by most galactic standards. Gravity 20% higher than galactic standard. Atmospheric composition that would poison most species. Weather patterns that included massive storms, temperature extremes, and seasonal variations that span most planets' entire climate ranges. But more importantly, humans had evolved as persistence hunters. They were one of the few species in the galaxy that could literally run their prey to death, while other predators relied on speed, strength, or ambush tactics. Humans had developed the ability to maintain steady pursuit over vast distances until their targets collapsed from exhaustion. The same traits that led ancient humans chase antelope across African plains for days at a time were now letting Marcus Chen walk through a planetary storm that was shutting down military-grade equipment. Marcus reached the ridge top as the storm entered its second night. He had been moving for over 40 hours, but his pace was still steady. He found a spot where the wind was slightly less brutal and helped Kretha position herself to catch any available starlight filtering through the clouds. Better? He asked. The silicoid's crystal structure brightened slightly. Yes, thank you, human Marcus. Stay here, Marcus told her. Rescue teams will find you when the storm clears. Where are you going? Marcus checked his tracker again. There was still more signals scattered across the landscape. Some were moving, indicating the cadets were probably safe. Others had been stationary for too long. There are others who need help. Marcus activated another emergency beacon and left it with Kretha. Then he started down the other side of the ridge, heading for the next cluster of signals. The storm raged around him, but Marcus had found his rhythm. This was what his species did. When everything else stopped, humans kept going. Not because they were stronger or faster or smarter than other species, but because they were built to outlast anything the universe could throw at them. Behind him, the emergency beacons marked the locations of rescued cadets. Ahead of him, more signals waited. Marcus checked his water supply, adjusted his pace for the long haul, and continued walking into the storm. In the command bunker, Zexthar stared at the display screen. The human's thermal signature continued its steady movement across the landscape, leaving a trail of rescue beacons in its wake. For the first time in her military career, the veteran instructor was witnessing something she had thought impossible. A cadet who got stronger as the mission got harder. A warrior who treated a planetary disaster as just another training exercise. Technician, she said quietly. How long can he maintain this pace? The technician ran calculations based on human physiology data. Based on his current performance, estimated operational capacity extends for another 18 to 20 hours. Instructor. Zexthar's mandibles clicked with something between amazement and respect. The human had already been moving for longer than most species could survive, and he was just getting started. Outside, the storm continued its rampage across the landscape. But somewhere in that chaos, a human walked steadily forward, gathering the survivors of species that had once laughed at his endurance. The Deathworld storm was about to learn what Earth had taught its children: never stop moving. The storm reached its full fury during the third day. Lightning split the sky in continuous sheets of electric blue. The wind became a living thing that clawed at anything foolish enough to move in the open. Temperature swings created thermal shocks that cracked rocks and shattered equipment. Marcus had been walking for 52 hours. His clothes were torn from wind and debris. His hands were cut from climbing over storm-damaged terrain. His feet moved in a steady rhythm that had become automatic. One step, then another, in the endless pattern that kept him alive. He carried 6 emergency beacons now, each one marking a cadet he had found and sheltered. His pack contained survival gear stripped from abandoned positions. He moved like a ghost through the storm, appearing wherever other cadets needed help. The radio crackled with static and broken transmissions. Most communication equipment had failed, but occasionally a signal would break through the electromagnetic chaos. Any station, Marcus spoke into his radio during a brief lull in the interference. This is Cadet Chun. I have multiple emergency beacons from rescued personnel. requesting immediate medical evacuation for critical cases. In the command bunker, Zexthara nearly fell out of her chair. The human's voice was tired but steady. After more than 2 days in hell, he sounded like he could keep going for another week. "Chun, this is Instructor Zexthara," she responded quickly before Static could cut them off again. "Report your status." "Operational and mobile, Instructor. I've reached 8 cadets so far. All are sheltered with emergency beacons. Vexpol and Gornix need immediate medical attention. Veltar has gill damage. Kretha is stable but needs energy recharge." Zexthara looked at the tactical display. Marcus had covered over 100 kilometers during the storm, moving from cadet to cadet across terrain that was barely passable in good weather. "Chun, you are ordered to shelter in place immediately. This storm is beyond survival parameters for any species." There was a pause. Static filled the radio. Then Marcus's voice came back, calm and determined. "Negative, Instructor. I have visual on 2 more thermal signatures. Estimate I can reach both positions within 4 hours. My operational capacity remains high." "Chun, that's a direct order. Find shelter and wait for extraction." Another pause. Lightning illuminated the landscape in stark white light, revealing the devastation the storm had caused. Trees were uprooted. Rocks had been moved like toys. The very terrain had been reshaped by the wind. "Instructor, with respect, there are people out here who will die if I stop moving. Human operational parameters allow for extended mission duration. I'm requesting permission to continue rescue operations." Zexthara stared at the radio. In 30 years of military service, no cadet had ever politely refused a direct order while volunteering for more dangerous duty. The human was asking for permission to continue doing the impossible. "Chun, how are you still functional?" Marcus was crouched behind a boulder, waiting for a lull in the wind before continuing. The storm had become a puzzle to solve rather than an enemy to fight. When the wind came from the east, he moved west and north. When lightning threatened, he found low ground. When the temperature dropped, he increased his pace. "This is what humans do, Instructor. We keep going until the job is done." The radio cut out again as electromagnetic interference spiked. Marcus waited for the static to clear, then keyed the microphone once more. "Instructor Zexthara, are you still receiving?" "I'm here, Chun. I need to tell you something. The other cadets, they're not weak. They're specialized. Veltar is the fastest swimmer I've ever seen. Gornix could probably punch through a starship hull. Vexpol has senses that could track a whisper across a battlefield." Marcus paused, watching the storm rage around his shelter. "They're not failing because they're inferior. They're failing because their strengths don't match this environment. But that doesn't make them less valuable." "What's your point, Chun?" "My point is that every species has something they're best at. Humans just happen to be best at not stopping." The radio crackled with Zexthara's response, but static made it impossible to understand. Marcus shouldered his pack and stepped back into the storm. There were still cadets out there who needed help. He found Texron, a winged avian with both wings broken and sheltering in the wreckage of what had been a tree. The proud flyer was reduced to crawling, his species' greatest advantage turned into a liability by the violent winds. "Human," Texron gasped when Marcus appeared. "My wings." "I can see." Marcus knelt beside him and checked the damage. Both wings were definitely broken, but the avian was otherwise unharmed. "Can you walk?" "Avians do not walk," Texron said with bitter pride. "We fly or we die." "Today you walk," Marcus said firmly. He helped Texron to his feet and supported him. Walking is just flying in a different direction. They moved together through the storm. Marcus matched his pace to Texron's limitations, but he never stopped moving. The avian was amazed to discover that the human could maintain his supportive grip for hours without tiring. How? Textron asked as they reached shelter. How do you do this? Marcus activated another emergency beacon and checked his remaining supplies. My grandfather taught me something when I was young. He said the secret isn't to be stronger than the challenge. The secret is to last longer than the challenge. And this storm? Marcus looked out at the chaos that had been raging for over 60 hours. This storm is strong, but it's not infinite. Everything ends eventually. The question is whether you're still standing when it does. The radio burst to life with a clear signal. Emergency frequencies had finally penetrated the electromagnetic interference. All stations, all stations. This is emergency command. Search and rescue operations will commence immediately upon storm cessation. All personnel maintain current positions. Marcus keyed his microphone. Emergency command. This is Cadet Chun. I'm mobile with multiple emergency beacons from rescued personnel. Continuing rescue operations. Cadet Chun, you are ordered to shelter in place immediately. Marcus looked at his tracker. 2 more signals were visible, both showing dangerously low heat signatures. They had maybe hours left before hypothermia became fatal. Emergency command, I have visual on 2 critical cases. Estimated reach time is 90 minutes. Request permission to complete rescue operations. There was a long pause. Then a new voice came over the radio. It was Zexthara. Chun, what is your honest assessment of your remaining operational capacity? Marcus checked his body carefully. His legs were tired but functional. His core temperature was stable. His water was running low, but not critical. His food was nearly gone, but hunger wasn't immediately dangerous. Instructor, my honest assessment is 18 more hours at current pace. Longer if I slow down. In the command bunker, Zexthara looked at the storm data. The worst of it would pass within 12 hours. The human was claiming he could outlast not just the storm, but the entire recovery operation that would follow. Outstanding work, Marine, she said quietly into the radio. Ma'am? You heard me, Chen. Outstanding work. Marcus smiled for the first time since the storm began. Then he adjusted his pack and headed toward the 2 remaining signals. The storm was starting to weaken, but there was still work to do behind him. A trail of emergency beacons marked the locations of cadets who would have died without human endurance. Ahead of him, 2 more lives waited for rescue. Marcus Chun, the human who had been laughed at for his weakness, walked steadily through the dying storm to bring his fellow warriors home. The storm finally broke after 61 hours of unprecedented fury. When the winds died and the clouds cleared, rescue teams found a landscape transformed by nature's violence. The training course had been torn apart and reshaped. Equipment was scattered across kilometers of broken terrain at the designated extraction point. They found Marcus Chen sitting calmly beside 8 other cadets. He had gathered them into a sheltered area during the storm's final hours, improvising a camp from debris and salvaged equipment. When the rescue shuttles arrived, Marcus was helping distribute the last of his water rations. The medical team rushed to check the gathered cadets. Most were suffering from exposure, exhaustion, or storm-related injuries. Veltarge's gills were damaged but healing. Gornix needed treatment for hypothermia. Kretha was severely energy-depleted but stable. Marcus was tired but alert. His medical reading showed he was fully operational. Cadet Chun, the lead medic, stared at his scanner. According to this, you could continue operations for several more hours. If needed, Marcus replied simply. The medical team looked at each other in amazement. After more than 60 hours in one of the worst storms ever recorded on Kepler 442c, the human was ready to keep working. How far did you travel during the storm? The medic asked. Marcus checked his tracker's distance log. 127 kilometers total. That includes backtracking to reach everyone. The number was staggering. Marcus had covered more ground during the storm than most species could manage in perfect weather. While other cadets had been fighting for survival, he had been conducting a one-person rescue operation. Back at the command center, Zexthar was reviewing the complete data logs. The story they told challenged everything she thought. She knew about human limitations. Marcus had maintained body temperature through movement, while others required emergency heating. He had carried extra equipment for miles without significant fatigue. Most importantly, he had demonstrated the kind of sustained operational capacity that military planners could only dream about. Technician, compile a full report on human performance parameters, Zexthara ordered. Forward copies to Command Authority and Training Development. Yes, Instructor. Should I include recommendations for protocol changes? Zexthara's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Yes. Immediate implementation of species-specific training protocols. Human endurance requirements are clearly different from galactic standard. 3 days later, the formal ceremony took place in the main assembly hall. All surviving cadets stood in formation, but the focus was clearly on one individual. Cadet Marcus Chun. The base commander's voice carried across the hall. For extraordinary performance under extreme conditions, for selfless rescue of fellow personnel, and for demonstrating capabilities beyond standard operational parameters, you are awarded the Galactic Persistence Medal. A ripple of amazement went through the assembled crowd. The Galactic Persistence Medal was a theoretical award. It had been created for acts of extended endurance, but military analysts had never expected any species to actually qualify for it. Marcus stepped forward to receive the award. The small crystal medal seemed insignificant compared to what he had accomplished, but it represented something much larger. Recognition that humans were not the weak species everyone had assumed. Furthermore, the base commander continued. Effective immediately, human personnel are authorized for extended operation protocols. Standard rest requirements will be adjusted to match human physiological capabilities. After the ceremony, Zexthara approached Marcus privately. The veteran instructor who had mocked human endurance 3 days earlier now looked at him with undisguised respect. "I owe you an apology, human," she said. "And an explanation." "No apology needed, instructor," Marcus replied. "You couldn't have known." "But I should have." Zexthara clicked her mandibles with something like shame. "In 17 campaigns, I've seen incredible feats of strength, speed, and tactical brilliance. But I've never seen anything like what you did in that storm. I just kept moving, instructor." "No." Zexthara's 4 eyes focused on him intently. "What you did was far more than that. You redefined what we thought was possible." She gestured toward the other cadets, who were recovering in the medical bay. Gornix can punch through armor plating. Veltar can outswim most aquatic species. Texron can fly faster than our shuttles. But when conditions became impossible, they stopped. "They're not weak," Marcus said. "They just specialize differently." "Exactly," Zexthara nodded. "Every species evolved for specific environments and challenges. But humans, your species evolved to outlast everything else. You don't specialize in being the best at any one thing. You specialize in never giving up." Over the following weeks, word of Marcus's performance spread throughout the galactic military. The story grew with each telling, but the basic facts remained unchanged. A human had walked through a planetary disaster for over 60 hours, rescuing multiple casualties, and finished the ordeal ready for more. Training protocols across the galaxy began changing. Human endurance became a benchmark for measuring sustained operational capability. What had once been considered impossible became the new standard for extended missions. Marcus found himself reassigned to the instructor course, despite being a recent graduate. His first class included representatives from 12 different species, all eager to learn human endurance techniques. "Welcome to Extended Operations Training," Marcus addressed his new students. "We're going to learn what your bodies are truly capable of when you refuse to stop." In the back of the classroom, instructor Zexthara observed the lesson. She had requested permission to audit Marcus's courses, claiming it was necessary for updating curriculum standards. The real reason was simpler. She was still trying to understand how she had been so wrong about human capabilities. The key, Marcus continued to his class, is not to fight the environment, but to outlast it. Every challenge has limits. Every storm eventually ends. Every enemy eventually gets tired. The question is simple. Will you still be standing when they're not? A young Krillian cadet raised one of her 4 arms. "Instructor Chun, what if we're not built for endurance like humans?" "Then you build it," Marcus replied. Endurance isn't just about biology. It's about mindset. It's about deciding that you'll take one more step, even when everything hurts. It's about making keep going your default response to adversity. After class, Zexthora approached Marcus's desk. "Your students respect you." "They respect what humans can do," Marcus corrected. "I'm just teaching them that they can do more than they think." "The galaxy's perspective on humans has changed considerably since the storm," Zexthara observed. "Earth's classification has been upgraded from Garden World to Specialized Training Environment. Human Marines are now the preferred choice for extended operations in hostile conditions." Marcus smiled. "My grandfather would have found that amusing. He always said humans were too stubborn to know when to quit." Perhaps Zexthara's mandibles clicked with what might have been humor. That's exactly what the galaxy needed. As the alien sun set over Kepler 442c, Marcus prepared for an evening run around the training facility. It was only a few kilometers, barely enough to maintain conditioning by human standards. But for other species watching from their quarters, it was another demonstration of the impossible made routine. The human who had been laughed at for his weakness was now teaching the galaxy a new definition of strength. Not the power to overcome any obstacle, but the determination to outlast every challenge in the end. That made all the difference. The Deathworld storm had tried to break everyone caught in its fury, but it learned the hard lesson that Earth had been teaching challenges for millions of years. Humans don't break. They bend, adapt, and keep moving forward, one step at a time, for as long as it takes, until the job is done.